So thank you very much, Gautam, for joining us today for this
My pleasure.
Hangout. I We've been friends for a while, and I've been following your work very, very closely. And I must say, I'm very impressed. Out of all the Hangouts that I've done, I was specifically looking forward to this one because it's you. We've talked a lot about work, and it's really nice to share thoughts with you, considering the rich background that you have, the kind of work that you've done. It's extremely versatile. You are extremely versatile. You've done work across verticals. You've combined. I think there are only a handful that we could really spot and say people who've combined HR and social media. You're fully a thought leader in that space. Could you like take all of us through what you've done, how you started off? I know you started off as a blogger, and you maintain two blogs along with a full-time job, which is also, I'm sure, it must be quite demanding. How do you do all of that, and why start a blog? Why start specifically on HR and social media? Tell me what you've been doing.
So I think there was a bunch of us in the early 2000s who started work around the same time in the 99 2002 range, and blogs had just come in. 2004 I think was the first indie blog competition, and we kind of discovered each other then and started. The whole conversation was around leaving comments on other people's blogs, and I think that bunch of people, not just me, all the people who kind of really invested themselves in blogs saw their careers change. So, for example, Sidin went from being a management consultant to an author. Priyanka Sachar went from being a IT project manager to a wedding photographer. Naina went from being a logo designer to a wedding photographer. Ramya went from being a market research professional to now a content trainer, and Gaurav Mishra went from being a auto marketing guy in Tata Motors to the social media thought leader that he's become now. So I think all of that handful of we were lucky to be there at the right time when there were not too many people on it. We discovered its transformative effect, and I think we realized, and I think I was already writing a lot on various HRE groups. So my initial blogs were essentially uh, just memos to myself. What I wrote on those e-groups by answering some questions, I would just cut and paste there. So that's how I started in 2000. And then I realized the power of blogging, and then, because I was already blogging about, writing about HR on these groups, the blog turned out to be into HR. So that's the story.
Okay, great. So I think you've carved a niche for yourself in the HR and social media space. How do you, what do you do what you do right now, where you are? What is your role like?
What is my role? So I'm working with
Yeah.
Philips India. I work with the HR team. Uh, my designation is GM HR strategy and projects, but I purely focus on the social part of HR, both externally and internally. So we're essentially trying to figure out. We did some work on the external space. We figured out a way to make Philips into an employer brand, leveraging social media. And we're also looking at how we can use within the enterprise to help people learn from each other, creating learning communities, helping people, stay connected after a training program and before a training program, and connect with trainers internally, externally. Also looking at, so I'm also part of my role is working with a global initiative called Philips University. We're also looking at how do you really redesign the whole process of learning within organizations with elements of social in it, and not just classroom training or e-learning, which is basically people clicking on screens and going away. So looking at how before you start designing a training program, you incorporate social elements. So so one of the first projects that I and Shantanu and Harun are working on is actually making a social media training program for Philips globally, and trying to build in blended elements of not just an e-learning program, but actually let people go out So we have social media guidelines at a global level, but it give employees a way to go out, engage with a Twitter account, come back, go out, engage on a Facebook page, and then hopefully our model is Dell and Cisco, who have actually really taken the social media training of employees with certification, etc. So we hope to get there and maybe do even better. So that's the whole plan.
All this sounds so very exciting. Also, Gautam,
Sorry. Yeah.
you've clearly managed to build a brand out of, like, Gautam Ghosh is a brand, and you've done that beautifully using social media, whether it's your blog, whether it's your Twitter handle. You follow a lot of other blogs, you stay in touch with them, you build a relationship with them, you build a rapport with them, you use lists, you're being named as an influencer in the HR domain by a few lists out there, a few magazines, uh, journals out there. How have you managed to do all of this? And I think that's what the session is also about today. How do you use social media for professional growth, for branding yourself, for landing yourself in a job, in your dream job, or building a persona on digital? How have you done that for yourself? And then I think we could move to the questions.
I think primarily, and this is one of my friends who works with IBM in Spain, who blogs about it, actually says he calls it making your work visible. So when we're blogging about a professional domain, you're basically telling people what you're working on, and it's not when you complete it, it's basically when you're work in progress. So you put out a thought out there, and there are five people who read it who've got ideas on it. They come back, they leave comments, they post other blogs about it, this I'm talking about that whole golden era of blogging from 2004 to 2008 and 9, before Twitter and Facebook really took off. And I think bec- blogs being uh, that way, we could get into depths, we could talk about each other, and I think that really shaped the way what people saw me as. A lot of times when I used to meet people who were quite senior, they would say, hey, we didn't know you were this young. We thought reading your blog you were like an old guy. So I didn't know whether to take that as a compliment or not. Sure. But I think the way to really, I mean, I'm not calling it a brand, but really a way to really understand how to do this is essentially keep talking about what you're working, keep making it visible to other people, and you'll find people who are interested in that work, and essentially a community forms around, because those of us who are passionate about our work, a community forms around a passion, around any passion, whether it's sports, lifestyle, entertainment, or even work. So if you're passionate about your work and you write about it passionately, you'll find passionate people. And because the internet is so large, you can find global people interested in that. So it's not really, you being limited by geography. And I think that has worked very well. I have people I consider friends whom I've never met, from across the US, UK, Europe, to Australia, and you know, and I've met a couple of them in conferences, etc., when they'd come down to India and Hyderabad. So it's a great way to find people who share your enthusiasm and ideas and have their own. I think that's
Great,
about
great.
it.
I'm curious to know, has all of this ever helped you actually get a role that you've been really wanting?
I think, yeah, I mean, when I joined 20 Days Social, Gaurav and I had never met before that. We communicated using blogs, and we had
Wow.
had a phone call once. And when he joined as the CEO of 2020 Social, he moved to Delhi and he said, let's meet up. And when we met, he said, I have this role for you. So 2020 Social was my first role. Then Brave New Talent happened because of people who read my blogs, knew that Brave New Talent was opening a center in India. And uh, the CEO was told by a consultant in the US that, you should look at Gautam Ghosh if you are opening a social recruiting uh, uh, startup in India. So, and then of course, my current job, I was referred by a mentor of mine who was a very senior person, but we got talking because he wrote a book and he blogged about it, and I wrote back to him. And Abhijit Bhaduri was the chief learning officer of Wipro, and he referred me to my current boss, Yashwant Mahadik, when Yash was looking at help in getting a social role within the India HR team. So my last three jobs have been thanks to social media.
Oh, great. So there's ROI on that, clear ROI. All right, I think we have way too many questions come in already, so we should probably look at them. So we have, I'll read them out to you, also for others who are watching the video. So Vikram is asking us, how would you distribute your time between blogs, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook for personal branding?
These days, of course, Twitter is the big uh, chunk of where it takes my time. LinkedIn, I check around 3 or 4 times a day to see my connection requests. I used to engage a lot in LinkedIn groups earlier, but I'm not really doing that. As a part of my role, I along with some global team, also moderate a Philips managed group on LinkedIn around innovations in marketing. So there's some work that happens there. But the chunk of my time is on Twitter. Blogging has sadly dwindled. 2006, I remember I posted around 600 blogs in the year, and I think this last year it was hardly 55 to 60 posts in the year, so it's kind of really plummeted these days, um, unless it's a tweet chat that I'm conducting, or the HR talks that we conduct in Philips, where the content is already in YouTube. I just have to embed it, or the tweet chat is storyfied, and I just have to embed it. That's lazy blogging, but mm, yeah, blogging has also come down. Facebook, not so much. I have a Facebook page. I don't do anything much on that except posts sometimes when I blog. Uh, Facebook is essentially, but there are some HR groups that people like Tanvi Gautam and others moderate. Abhijit Baduri has a group, etc., where the interesting stuff on HR gets shared, and some of us like Sarangai kind of post there regularly. It's like a HR social evangelists all out there trying to get the other HR guys onto social. So yeah.
Great. So we have Kunjal Kamdar asking us, what is your advice to HR professionals for Twitter?
The example that I give is, as a for any professional, not just a HR professional, if you had to have a conversation with Tom Peters, the number one management consultant in the world, you would probably have to shell out a lakh or 2 lakh rupees in India just to sit in a crowded room and listen to him. On Twitter, you can talk to him for free and he responds. And that is the case for irrespective of whether you're HR, sales, marketing, operations, whatever. The gurus are out there sharing their learnings, sharing their wisdom out there on Twitter. You can learn for free and you can interact with them. You can share your ideas with them, and when they respond, others discover you. So when Tom Peters once retweeted a tweet of mine, we're having conversation on a topic, suddenly he's got a lakh plus followers, and then they kind of some people notice you. So I think that's the biggest beauty of Twitter. You kind of too many people think it's about outrage and frivolity and what you're having for lunch, dinner kind of tweets. But if you really objectively say, what is the purpose of my being on Twitter? And my being on Twitter, I've essentially is to learn and engage with thought leaders like these. And so that's what keeps me going. That's what I tell uh, most people, and um, I tell my uh, senior executives also. So I was actually coaching three of the senior executives within Philips on using social media. So that's what I tell them already. You can always learn something on Twitter every day.
Are they active now?
Uh,
Trying to
they 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 read a lot, but they don't really
engage.
engage much.
Okay, alright. Okay, so we have Prasad asking us how social recognition will help anyone to build their professional growth.
So if I understand correctly, social recognition is essentially when a peer of yours recognizes you either within an organization or outside, and that is so essentially what happened was earlier was if you did a great job, your boss would probably say it in front of the rest of the team saying you did a great job. But today that your boss can say, your co-workers can say, your peers can say, and the whole world, or at least the whole organization, if you're doing it internally, can get to know, okay, so for example, Adil shared this with me. He says, a recruiter in Dell meets his numbers and his manager or his friends, colleagues kind of congratulate him. There's every chance that even Michael Dell can see the recognition that this guy is believing in. He said that is a huge motivation for somebody, more than the money aspect of, I completed a goal, I got a, reward by saying, okay, if I do complete my goal, even Michael Dell, can see me and congratulate me. And I think that builds your personal brand both within and outside the organization. People notice that, people are giving you, badges, stickers for kudos and thanks for helping them out. And a lot of the work that we do within an organization is not very visible to our bosses. So you went out and helped a colleague, and the colleague then, thanks you on the internal social network. Your boss comes to know. It might have been a, small thing. You can't fit it into your KRA and KPIs, but then that work becomes visible, as I said, even internally. Others notice it, and it kind of helps.
And that then motivates you to do more of it.
Absolutely. Actually, a friend of mine in an organization that provides recognition solutions said they in Canada, which is the headquarters, they're actually looking at how you can look at social recognition as a trigger to say whether a guy is actually looking at resigning. So when you have somebody who's decided to resign, he or she will only start doing his work and will not start helping out colleagues. So, and they actually track saying, okay, so if this guy has been consistently getting social recognition by his colleagues and suddenly it dips, then this guy is disengaged from his work. His manager doesn't know because he's doing the work that he's supposed to do on a day-to-day basis, but he's stopped helping out. And so it actually looking at a predictive analytics kind of setup saying, okay, when something like this happens, his manager should be alerted. So it works both ways.
This is really interesting stuff, something that even I didn't hear of. So we have Saima asking us how to use social platforms to market oneself to prospective employers.
Well, the big thing is uh, you can do it two ways. One, you talk about the stuff that you're doing without really showcasing confidential information. So if there's confidential information for your organizations, don't share that. Except apart from that, you can share stuff that you're doing, saying, "I'm so happy I finished this exciting project." Um, there's this interesting anecdote I was reading in the US where a guy used Instagram to get a job. So he's a barber. So what he used to do is he was used to take photographs of his clients after a haircut and post them to Instagram. And he discovered that a barber shop in some other city was following him. Then later on, when he actually lost this job in this other, he actually messaged to the barber shop and they said, "We've been following you, we've been seeing your work, and we would like you to come and interview with us." So for a trial cut. So he went there, did a trial cut, they hand him a job. So that's the first case I heard about somebody. So it also depends on the kind of jobs. A kind of job where you can showcase your something either visually or in writing, or something as, so for example, organizations are hiring software engineers using sites like GitHub and Stack Overflow, where they put code that they've made on these sites because people kind of advise other people on how to, write the best code and how to make the code more elegant. These are places where hiring managers can spot great talent. Designers, there are niche sites for designers where, even using Pinterest, for example, can showcase you. The other thing that's still very underrated is Quora, because I think you can. A lot of people say they can't blog because they have to think about what to blog. Quora, if you go search for your professional interests or your area of work, you can see people asking questions about it. If you really know your work well, you can answer those questions and then share the link on Twitter and embed that post in your blog. So you basically, it doesn't remain in Quora. So for example, that answer, it's also in the public domain on your blog, or you're sharing it on Twitter. Also, so you don't really need to think, what should I write or what should I post? There's already trigger, somebody is asking, what's a good sales process for a B2B industry? And you know that, you write that and then post that on Twitter and say, I answered this question, and I post that on your blog. Then somebody who's really hiring B2B salespeople, he has something more than just your resume to judge you on. But of course, you have to have stuff. You have to know your stuff before you do any of this, which is true for either brands or people.
Absolutely. So we have Rahul Kumawat asking, are there Indian companies who check social profiles of candidates while hiring or promotion?
I'm sure they are. I'm sure it's more in the digital space where, which is more prevalent. Traditional companies, not so much, because, at most they would check LinkedIn, because you're hiring so many people. Your recruiters, etc., are not really, wasting time on going to Facebook profiles and checking out. For small companies which have to be very conscious about who they are hiring, etc., I'm sure a lot of this is happening. And I know a lot, if you're in a being hired for a digital marketing role, or any digital or social role within an organization, then it will be checked out, because what you're doing on a personal front has impact about how you'll be seen if you're hired into a larger organization. So it's happening in pockets, it's happening in certain roles, it's happening in certain industries, not really full-fledged out yet, not in the larger firms, because the amount of time needed would be much less. But a lot of things are being automated also. So going back to the previous question and blending with Rahul's question, there are startups in the US which are actually making a profile of you without you knowing. So for example, you answered a question on Java on Quora. You've posted a Java code on GitHub. You tweet about Java stuff, and you have a blog writing about Java, and your LinkedIn profile mentions Java. The software puts a digital profile of yours, taking in all the data. And I remember Talent Bin, for example, claimed that it had profiled 100 million people worldwide. You and I don't know, but there probably are profiles. Anybody who's active digitally or on the social world, their profiles are out there and recruiters are going through it. So you could find a
Wow.
job tomorrow when somebody does that.
Okay, we have Ritu Bajaj asking, what are the key guidelines for newcomers like me on social media?
Uh, for I think the first thing that you have to clear out is what are your objectives? Are you a consultant? Do you want clients through social media? Are you a job hunter? Do you want a job through social media? A job through social media will not happen like tomorrow. So you have to have a long-term strategy because, as somebody said, social media is a tree that you've sown 6, 7 years ago. The fruits are just being, you know, so it's a long-term game. You have to find people. My key this thing is you have to find people you can learn from. I think as long as you keep learning, you'll find and join them in conversations. They will get to know you, and once they do that, so for example, today a lot of the top HR executives are there on Twitter. For somebody who's graduating out of MBA in HR right now, he or she can talk to Anand Pillai of Reliance, Abhijit Bhaduri of Wipro, Yashwant Mahadik of Philips, and you know, and they when you have that conversation, they get to know you, which is the biggest, you know, uh, thing about social media. You are not a faceless candidate anymore. If they follow you back, you can have, DM conversations, etc. on Twitter. And I know my boss Yash does that, and so that is when I think the biggest thing is to follow interesting people you can learn from. Share your knowledge with them, share your ideas with them if you don't have the knowledge. Question them, learn from them. Um, just comment saying, I thought your blog post was great if you think it was great. Or say, sir, you missed a certain point. In my opinion, it should be something like that. Let them notice you. I think that is you have to be interesting for them to notice you. Don't just follow and not have a conversation.
Great. Sudhir is asking, can you share some practices on how to engage with job applicants?
Uh, so, as a recruiter, I'm not sure because I don't actually recruit. Uh, what I have done, for example, um, for two new roles that we had at Philips, I just thought of people I knew through Twitter. So when we were looking at hiring a digital marketing head, we didn't go out and post it on any site. We just got the headcount internally approved. I knew some 3 or 4 people through Twitter. The CMO said he doesn't want to interview more than 3, 4 people. 2 people came for the interview. One of them got a job. So everything happened without the traditional recruiting process. In the other one, we hired the head of content development of Philips University. I just knew of him because I met him at a tweet up at Powai when I was in Bombay. And then I realized he works in the e-learning industry because his tweets are not about work. So there's another lesson. So if you turn up for tweet ups and you're not posting stuff around work, there's still a chance that somebody would come to know. So when we were looking for this person and we got him on board, at first trying to pitch to us as a consultant, and then we made him an offer saying, forget being a consultant, join us, because we wanted to understand what's his approach in doing the work, and then we made the offer. So so it's about one, there's about content, about what you post. There's probably another offline component. You turn up for mixers, tweet ups, what have you, and maybe you'll find somebody who wants to offer you a job.
Great. Amit Shukla is asking, with social media being such an important aspect, so should organizations focus more on content or the engagement, and how can HR help?
I think it's not a question of either or. It's got to be both. You have to have interesting content that will engage people. Uh, just engagement for the sake of engagement will not. So, uh, I'm assuming he means it in a employer branding kind of way because. So look at it this way: if your organization is not known, people don't want to join it for some reason because it's not known. So you have to be interesting enough for job applicants to kind of consider you. Either you showcase thought leadership in the form of saying, okay, this guy who works with us is great, so put your people out there as talent magnets, as my boss calls it, and they will attract. Not people will join the organization not because of the organization but because of these, saying, hey, I can get a chance to work with this guy. If their organization is fairly less known, if the organization is large, for example, what Capgemini or Philips or Dell are doing is essentially you share the organization story. What are you doing in CSR? What is your thought around your businesses? What do you do for? So even stuff that you're doing internally to engage employees can be showcased externally. So people say, hey, I think I can work in a company where such things happen. You also self-select. People who get turned off by these things will not apply to you. So you save on recruitment costs by saying, okay, only people who like working in an organization like ours come apply. So you have to have both content and engagement. And of course, for the people who don't want to, so there's the other thing is about reaching out to people who are experts. You use different methods of attracting them. They will engage with content more than people, so it works both ways. So it's not a either or in my.
Okay. Gozup is asking, which LinkedIn groups would you recommend for building SM professionals, for budding SM professionals? LinkedIn groups.
Uh, I don't know. I haven't. I joined a few social media groups. I kind of left them because there's lately not too much uh, content that is being shared or engagement that I see. So I think the best way would be to kind of search in the groups tab, figure out which are the groups with the largest numbers of members. So there'll be some activity there. People will be sharing something at least on a weekly or a daily basis. I think that should be. But for social media, I think uh, you should be following the best social media blogs in India. Of course, Social Samosa in uh, the US, and Social Media Today, Social Media Examiner, which act as aggregators of the best content. And then, you know, and of course, there are lists of social media people on Twitter. I'm sure a lot of them. So follow them and engage with them if you're looking at building a career in social media.
Great. 10 on 10 for this answer. You know why? We have Raj Lakshmi who's asking, 2014 is supposed to be the year of social media. How ready are companies to have a specific role for social media?
So I think a lot of companies have either a person looking at social media apart from a role, or a role. And I know Raj Lakshmi, she's a HR person, so I assume she's asking for HR. So a lot of companies have a role internally, but they're not really talking about it. So I was actually surprised when I went to a LinkedIn event when somebody from Airtel was presenting, and there was a person out there whose role was social media recruiting. And a lot of us don't know because that person doesn't engage on social media, but he's using social media to hire a lot of people, leveraging LinkedIn, and they're saying this year they'll start leveraging Twitter and all also. And they're hiring senior level professionals, and they're saving organization and an insane amount of money, because the charges that could have gone to recruitment consultants are being slashed because you're using social media. So they actually say, you know, 7 and 8 digit numbers is what they said they've managed to save compared to last year, because they hired 242 middle and senior professionals using LinkedIn and Twitter, primarily LinkedIn.
That's a clear ROI there.
Absolutely.
Great. So before I move on to the next question, the topic of the hangout was using social media for professional growth. But your brand name of Gautam Ghosh in the HR recruitment plus social media space is so strong that people automatically have started asking questions on social recruiting. That's clearly your work speaking right there. So we have here HRE Forum, who's asking, is social media the right tool for recruitment strategies?
As in, recruitment is a large umbrella. Social media is one of the tools. Of course, you use employee referrals, where also social can play a part. There are, apps that reside on Facebook where you could ask your employees to easily make available. There are applicant tracking systems that are building social capabilities. When you post a job, it automatically gets posted onto your employees' networks if the employee has agreed for it. So it is not a standalone. It started off being a standalone thing using LinkedIn and for recruiting, but of course the fact is that you can use it in the other ways of hiring, like referrals and the only thing that will suffer is recruiting agencies, but a lot of recruiting agencies are hiring through social. So there are always organizations who don't want to, if there's a strategic role, they don't really want to say we are hiring for this role. So recruiting agencies will themselves, are leveraging social media because that's their day-to-day business. Organizations might hire for some time, not hire for some time, but recruiting agencies basically aggregate that demand, and they've kind of used LinkedIn and now getting onto other platforms a lot faster than traditional organizations. But of course, it's not the right. Yeah, sorry.
So Varun is asking, from a recruiter's perspective, how do you keep a constant, engaged hiring process on social media which doesn't seem mundane? I'm also keen to listen to this answer.
So the one factor is on a recruiting, this thing is, have you identified people so before you need them? So if you have these X number of key roles in your organization, have you used social media to identify people whom you can fill in those roles if people suddenly, resign tomorrow? So if your hiring manager comes and says, this key talent of mine is resigned, as a recruiter, do you know people or who you've kind of kept in touch with using social media, at least 4 or 5 people for that role? And that's really the recruiter's planning and pipelining job, saying what are the key jobs in my organization and how can I use social media to identify replacement candidates, and have I kept in touch with those people so it doesn't seem like I'm calling out of the blue. So these 2 people I hired on within Philips, I could reach out to them because I wasn't really looking at recruiting them, but we were Twitter friends, and because and both of these people had spent 13-14 years in their previous organization. Nobody really thought these 2 people will leave these organizations. People thought they would retire from there. The only reason they agreed to talk to me and Yash was because of the relationship that we built on Twitter and social media. So they said, hey, if a junior recruiter with 2 years experience calls us up, we wouldn't have taken the call. But because you guys reached out is the reason that one of them actually said it. So I think that is really the way for the recruiter should also, encourage the hiring managers to be their talent scouts. So if I'm a sales manager and I engage with a lot of different sales folks on LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups or on Twitter, I have a better chance of hiring sales managers than the recruiter does because I know the job, I can articulate it much better, etc. So it's also the recruiter's job of enabling the others in the organization to always look at talent and finding out where they could get hired for. I'm sure when you hired for Social Samosa, you didn't.
Also, I think a part of this question is so we've never used a recruiter. The way you
Absolutely.
hired the two people that we're talking about, the entire team is
Right.
built that way.
Absolutely, and that's because you know of them through social media, and I think that's basically what
Absolutely.
will happen more and more when people get online.
Absolutely. Also, I think the second half of this question was how do you keep them engaged, like a constant engaged community, constant engaged hiring process on social media, which doesn't seem mundane. So you did something with Philips sometime back, some campaign. I can't recollect what the name of the campaign was. Um,
So
how did
we did campus journals to really engage and basically showcase what Philips is compared to what people's perception is about Philips is. So we did a month-long campaign aimed at business schools, but with basically students. It wasn't really a hiring strategy or something. But I know, for example, what Capgemini is doing. They've created these various groups around skills, so IT infrastructure or some kind of big data groups on around big data, or essentially they've identified 10 to 15 skills that are important for the organization. They've created communities on LinkedIn and Facebook. They've invited people from across the world to join them, and they showcase basically Capgemini's um, thought leadership in those skill areas, and they also trigger discussions about what would these people do, how will. So essentially, you've got to start let people start talking about themselves. Just can't, you know, so asking questions, how would you solve a problem like this? And the content comes from vetted by the marketing team. It's managed by an agency, um, and they encourage their subject matter experts to get onto the group and you know figure out who are the interesting people that are posting interesting stuff that could be considered potential candidates. So all around identifying experts and putting them in the pipeline, and 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 it's known that it is a group managed by Capgemini. Philips, we do the same thing for the lighting sector, the healthcare sector, and the marketing group, where we run global groups uh, run by the talent acquisition team, but really um, content, etc., is not around jobs and careers. It's about the area of work, and we try to get our senior leaders, etc., all involved in it.
great. Rupap is asking what strategy content specifically do you suggest to balance professional and personal interests on various SM channels?
So I have a rule of thumb of not talking about two areas. One is politics or religion. Apart from that, uh, I basically share interesting content. It doesn't have to be. So if you go through my Twitter timeline, I post stuff around technology. I post stuff around interesting facts. You know, anything interesting that people can relate with. I also post personal stuff in the way in by saying what song am I listening to or how was the drive and it's too foggy in Delhi today, etc. Uh, That kind of tells people you're not there just pushing content. Uh, and sometimes people react more to those personal quips, etc. But yeah, my thumb rule is not to talk about politics or religion at all. I've crossed the politics lines a couple of times, uh, which my other two colleagues do a lot more frequently. But I have never felt very comfortable, you know, talking about these two aspects on social media channels because it gets very polarizing. You're not really doing stuff that you were planning to do for on social media. There you'll get into fights and you end up. I've got into fights in the old days of the internet before the social media era on bulletin boards. So yeah, I've kind of had anger when I've looked at a screen. I don't want to relive those days in the social media era because the internet does not forget, as Adil keeps saying.
So, what do you recommend people tweet? What balance do they have
So if somebody has got
about with respect to
if
personal?
somebody has a lot of desire to talk about politics and religion, open an anonymous account which is not in your name, so that people potential recruiters and employers don't get to see that. That's mostly a red flag. Don't make racist or sexist statements. Those are no-nos. You won't even get the offer even if your professional content is great. We saw the example in the end of last year of this PR lady who got onto the flight and tweeted something about going to Africa and not getting AIDS because she was white,
Right.
and by the time she landed, she lost her job. So if you are in a job, please don't do it. If your name can be linked uh, to your job, if you have a very common name like whatever John Smith, then if people maybe, but yeah, then you don't have to have a DP. If you don't have a DP, people don't follow you. So anonymity is tough in the age of the internet, as my friends keep discovering, and it's becoming tougher and tougher with Google cracking down on old handles, Quora not allowing handles names, so you can't really hide anywhere, or there are very few places to hide. Let's just put it that way. You could hide on Reddit, but I'm not sure anybody uses Reddit for hiring yet.
So Raj Lakshmi is asking, what another powerful social media tools other than Twitter and LinkedIn that one can use for professional growth?
So as I mentioned, Quora is a great tool for learning and sharing. So you discover topics that are relevant to your area. You keep posting it, and then you repost it to a blog. I think still, and we keep having these discussions or read articles about whether blogging is dead or not. I think it's not because, as I was telling somebody the other day on Twitter, the less people blog, the more you stand out, because suddenly after the glut of blogs, now there are much less blogs at a individual personal blogs that are being run. So if you do that and keep sharing it, the content delivery mechanism of blogs has changed. Google Reader has shut down. Very few of us use things like Feedly, but a lot of the incoming traffic these days onto blog posts is through social. So uh, sharing them on Twitter and Facebook. That. The other interesting fact is, although some people might say it is not really social, I still believe it is. There are these emerging uh, MOOCs, that's massive online open courses that startups like Coursera, edX, Udacity, etc. are starting off. And example, Coursera has tied up with all the major universities in the US. And so you could theoretically enroll in a course of, you know, if you want to for mechanical engineering or quantum computing. It doesn't care about what you studied earlier, etc. You just got to keep up with the pace. There are videos, there are wikis, there are bulletin boards. You're supposed to do assignments. There's a start date and a end date. But so that is, I see a lot of some people on Twitter whom I follow have, for example, done a course on gamification. Somebody's done a course on music appreciation. So if tomorrow you want, Mark Fidelman, my friend in the US, is offering a MOOC on personal branding, and he's offered, so it's paid, but he's offered a, if you sign up through saying you're from Twitter, you get a certain amount of discount. But most MOOCs are free. So, and that's the other thing. And of course, there are how-tos. BuzzFeed actually compiled a list of 21 skills you can build in 2014 by just looking at something as diverse as Excel skills for MS Excel to something knitting. There are courses out there. People are sharing their knowledge in videos and writing, and then stitching it up in a learning start to end kind of finish, where they say, okay, watch this video, go read this blog post, download this paper, complete this assignment. And it's not like you are alone doing it. Coursera courses have enrollments going from 20,000 to 50,000 students from all across the world. And of course, there's YouTube channels. All the major US universities have put their learning content videos on YouTube. A lot of the IITs have also. So if you are an engineer and you couldn't get into IIT, you can still attend classes by IIT profs. And that's the, I think, big democratization that is taking place. Yesterday, I was reading about a startup in Africa that actually makes delivery not just through video, but other means and content like phone calls and SMSs, which are much more useful and relevant to the context of. And I think this was a Tanzanian, and I tweeted it out also, a Tanzanian startup that is actually going much more bottom of the pyramid level. So a lot of ways you can learn apart from Twitter and LinkedIn.
We have last 5 minutes left and we have a few questions, so we'll not take any more apart from the ones we've already collated. So Vikram is asking, what is the relative importance of quality versus frequency in increasing one's social media clout and presence?
I think quality is more important, frequency is less so. But it depends on where you are in your social media journey. If you're just starting out, maybe frequency is also very important, because you then are visible in the eyes of the people you want to make an impact on. I think that's the short answer. And I'm thankful Vikram didn't spell it as clout with a K.
Clout K. Oh, in fact, I was wondering, is this the right spelling now?
That is actual spelling.
Yeah, it got me confused. So Selma is asking, is Slack an effective tool for recruiting talents, especially leaders? So I think at a senior level, I think you're probably the live example for that. You did that.
Yeah, we did that, and of course, I mean, if you look at it, LinkedIn, everybody is there. So if you want to use LinkedIn to reach out to any leader, you can do so. Everybody maintains a LinkedIn presence. They might not be on Twitter. They might be very shy on Facebook, but you can always reach them through LinkedIn. So I think that's and some leaders are active on Twitter, but you can't probably hire them. You can't hire a Anand Mahindra or a Vijay Mallya. But apart from that, I think a lot of people are on LinkedIn, so you can hire leaders through LinkedIn. And some of us are on Twitter also.
So we have Vikas who's asking, in internal employee social networks, biggest challenge is making employees use it like LinkedIn kind instead FB. How to achieve this?
I think the
So I think the
challenges.
usage pattern is more like this.
I think the biggest challenge is why employees don't see a need for using internal social networks. There is no business case saying if you use this, you will do your work better, faster. So a certain amount of use case or reason has to be provided to employees on why to use a Yammer or a Chatter within an organization. And and in very small organizations, it doesn't really work because you can always reach out. So if it's the management wants to impose it so that they get what discussions people are having are archived and there. But if employees can do that by walking across the floor and talking to somebody, then they really don't see a need. In a large distributed organization, you really have to figure out why you want to use it. So, for example, in Asian Paints, my friend Kavi actually said, we are working on this policy. So before this policy gets published, give us your views on it. That's the reason employees, went back and either they said, change this, or this is a suggestion, or they agreed or disagreed. But the fact is, there was a reason for going out there and saying, and then when that policy gets rolled out, people said, okay, they asked our inputs before a policy was rolled out. And more organizations just think because it's got a stream and there are profiles, people will engage with it. A lot of people are not engaged in the true sense in their organizations. Why will they take out time extra and really, say, okay, I suffer my colleagues through the day. Why should I, also engage with them socially, internally?
Interesting. Kunjal is asking, any advice or tips for leadership to use social media, blogs, as most of them are not willing to be in that space?
So I think there was this short answer. There's a research done by the Community Roundtable on how to build social leaders, and it has a step-by-step process. You can't push them in. One is they've got much less time, or they think unless they see value in it, they won't really push it. So the Community Roundtable has actually got a step-by-step guide to how you can get your leaders become social, and I think they've done it the best. Do go to the communityroundtable.com, look at the search for social leaders. I think you'll find the white paper there. Short answer.
Okay. Manveer is asking, have you come across any organization that use social gaming as a recruitment tool?
I've heard about one hotel chain, Marriott, I think, which used an app on Facebook where you could actually log in if you're a job candidate and find out how to do a job in, I think, Marriott or Hyatt, one of these two. You could actually do stuff, engage with other job seekers who are also playing that game, get points, and then really understand. It was more about not a recruitment tool per se, but more about understanding what is in the job. And of course, the more you return it, the recruiter and the HR people know that you're interested in the job, which is why you're logging in every day for a week and playing that game, and you're interested in getting to the next level and showcasing yourself. There's a couple of organizations based out of India which are actually providing gamification platforms for employees after you've given them an offer, but typically in campus it happens, right? You give an offer, you have 7 months till the guy joins. How do you keep them engaged and not help them look at other organizations? So a couple of startups, both in Pune actually, EME, which is a subsidiary of Persistent Systems, and Mindtickle, are actually creating gamification platforms that engage people you have offered jobs to the time they join. So you actually can push out, the boring training parts that people have to come and sit for 2 days, and where people go and train them. You can actually get them to go through that information uh, using a gamified tool. They also do analytics, so they actually get back to organization and said, hey, these 15 people logged on and did this, but these 3 people, even after 3 reminders, have not logged on over the last 2 months. So that's also a signal for the HR folks to say, hey, these 3 people are really not interested in joining the or taking the offer. They just, so you can plan for contingency, etc.
Okay. We have the second last question. Sampath, who's asking, is LinkedIn dead as an engagement platform?
I think it depends on people to people. LinkedIn, because of its big focus on content, wants with the influencer content. I think that is, the most uh, uh, leveraged part of LinkedIn. So they want people to come and read what Richard Branson or all these folks are writing. So that way, I think LinkedIn itself has made a strategic decision not to be an engagement platform, but really be a place where people come and read and write on what others are doing. So I think there is maybe truth in that, but I'm not sure whether it is dead, because I'm sure there are some groups that are active, but the number is coming down, dwindling, and I think unless one has a interesting group um, moderator, that also is a challenge for making it a engagement platform.
So this is last question, but I mean there are a few others that you might have on your mentions tab, but
Okay.
we're already exceeding the time, so we'll pick this as the last one. Purnima is asking, is social media really the right medium to hire employees, considering it's very easy to exhibit a fake personality?
Um, so it's not very easy to exhibit a fake personality for long, and I think those of us who are using social media for hiring is essentially we know people over us, over years probably, and that is why we really reach out to them when hiring for social media, non-LinkedIn platforms, say Twitter or Facebook is more an engagement platform. So you don't really, because of privacy settings, you can't even see most people's Facebook profiles. People are becoming very sensitive to that. But Twitter is open. You can scroll down a person's timeline. There is no way he or she can fake a personality for, you know, um, and if he or she is faking a personality, then there will be red flags, and you need to kind of actually, mm, be on guard about that. So it's also, not really. So it gives you signals about whether the person is being fake or not. To close that, actually, there's an interesting story a friend of mine shared. She's not on social media. She works with Citibank in Singapore, and when banking is a very strict profession, so they have, most of these large organizations have a agency called a background verification agency who actually goes out and says, checks or rechecks what you have said about your employment record and education, etc. And if all the areas are not green, the offer does not go out to them. She said the agency came back and said amber, which is, it's not outright red, but it's not outright green, because they could not get information about some things that the candidate had actually uh, admitted or written in his candidature. And then she said in something very interesting. They actually went out into social media and found proof that supported this candidate's claim. So it actually led him to getting a job, whereas before social media, you would not have found that proof because, say, the candidate had worked in a small firm which closed down, and there's no record of that. The agency won't find that, and therefore, the candidate gets a yellow instead of a green on his this thing, and therefore doesn't get the likelihood of getting a job without that is very low. So she said actually social media actually helped them to hire a good candidate because they found information that supported the candidate's claim. So it works both ways, I think. It's not, people kind of tend to focus too much on the negatives of jobs and social media because I think that's a good story for the media to throw up about somebody lost a job through social media, but lots of people are finding jobs through social media. Maybe that's not a good story for the media, and I think it's becomes our job to kind of share that by saying, hey, it's not all scary. So thanks, Ankita. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Gautam. These are
My
great
pleasure.
answers, really, truly enriching answers. Um, in fact, I myself have learned a lot, considering I understand social media, but this is a new aspect for me also to that I'm trying to really read up a lot on because it truly interests me. I realize there's a lot of work that's happening in companies which we're not aware of. It's all happening in the back end. It's all there's no physical, visible tangible proof or property that so if it's marketing, then I can see a brand having a Facebook page, a Twitter community, they're running campaigns. This is happening all behind closed doors, so there's no way to even figure out what brands are doing with respect to social hiring and recruiting. So that was it's really I learned a lot myself today. I hope everybody got their answers. I'm sure you have a bunch of other questions on your mentions tab. You could take it after that. If you could also let us know out of all these, maybe the next half an hour, 1 hour, if you could let us know whom do we give the samosas to, whose question was the most interesting.
Okay.
And we'd all really thank you for joining us, and also quickly like to thank Watt Consult, who sort of brings all of this alive for us. It. And we hope to stay in touch, Gautam, and have you write more with us so that more and more people learn about social recruiting.
My pleasure. I'll be writing a little more maybe
Good.
this year. Oh, by the way,
Great.
just to plug, I have a book coming out later in the year with the same topic. So people whose answers did not get answered, there'll be stuff around. Watch out around the second half of the year is when I'm aiming for the book, depending on publication and edition, editors.
Good, you've already put some pressure on yourself. Second half of the year, we are going to be looking forward to your book.
Pleasure.
And not only the ones whose questions are not answered, even the ones who you did answer, they could refresh their memories by going through your book.
Yeah, the book will focus a lot more on what professionals can do for themselves and for the organization, not just recruiting. It's kind of
great, great. Sounds holistic and interesting. Thanks once again, Gautam.
You have a great day.
I'll
I
see you
hope
at the
everybody
other
on the
side.
chat have a great day too.
See you.
Bye.